watch for that, people being on mute. And if you could mute them as they join, that'd be great. If you're with us now and you could put yourself on mute, that'd be excellent. We'll have time at the end for some questions, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding the task force. And so you'll be free throughout the session to, you can either chat in a question if you don't want to forget it or whatever the case is, but there will be time at the end of our community conversation here to just ask some general questions and get some answers. So I'm just going to kick things off and introduce myself here. So my name is Ben Lee, and I'm the Director of Community Impact at United Way of Marathon County, and I'm also the lead for the housing task force that we're today. And so I wanted to just take a minute and kind of introduce who's here and who we are and how this all sort of came about. And Ben Bliven is going to help me with that today because, you know, Ben launched the task force. And so we're going to take you back to somewhere around November of 2019 and just kind of remind you of how this started and why we got here. And then as you can see on the screen here, we have an agenda. It's pretty loose. The whole idea of this is to be pretty casual with you and just bring you along on the work we've been doing for the last year and what that looks like and what those results are. And so we'll talk a little bit about the mission that we share, the timeline of the task force, and then what this means for the Housing and Homelessness Coalition, what it means for the North Central Continuum of Care, and some of those key things you're going to hear throughout this. And then what we really want to focus a lot of time on is handing it over to the people in the task force that are really doing the work around the objectives that we've identified to help kind of solve people who are find themselves in a situation of being unhoused in Marathon County. And so you can see what those objectives are: enhanced coordination of services between agencies, the availability of outreach case management, and then of course untreated mental health and substance abuse issues. And then that's where we'll open it up and have a conversation just around some of the questions that you may have. So I'll start with introducing Ben Bliven, Wausau Police Chief, who kind of launched this whole thing, and I'll let him just give an overview of, you know, what was the reason for this in November? Why did he pull this group of individuals together, and what was he hoping to accomplish here? So Ben, if you want to go ahead and take it from there.
Hey, thanks, Ben. I appreciate that, and thanks to everybody that's joined our meeting here tonight to talk about homelessness in our community. And I think that's one of the best things about working in Wausau in the Marathon County community. There's so many people that are interested and willing to jump in and help. And you know, I think over the last 18 months we've seen that firsthand in our community. There's just a lot of good people here, a lot of resources here, and so, you know, at the end of the day, we can solve this problem in terms of the chronic homelessness in our community. The resources exist here, and with a focused effort, I think we can get there. And so I think that's the great thing that we can work toward here in our community. Just to lay out a little bit of the background of you know, kind of our involvement over the last 18 months. Like Ben had mentioned, you know, back in November of 2019, we started a homelessness task force, and really the genesis of that task force was community discussions, maybe a little different than this, but kind of in the same vein, which were really centered around the loitering ordinance, the parking ramp loitering ordinance that the city of Wausau considered and passed in October of 2019. And so I think the concern from our community that was evident, and the interest in our community that was evident around homelessness, you know, really drove our community to think about what additional steps we need to take to really align resources in our community to make a significant impact around homelessness. And so, you know, I had a lot of discussions with a lot of people in our community, and, you know, we decided to really take an in-depth look at the homelessness issues in our community and what we needed to do to really align resources. And so that we coined the homelessness task force and reached out to a number of leaders in our community, people from, we had people from the Chamber of Commerce, Salvation Army, Marathon County government. I think the deputy administrator at the time was part of that. Michael Loy, the CEO from North Central Healthcare, the mayor of Wausau, and I was involved from the city of Wausau. Our city council president, Lisa Rasmussen, was part of the task force. Diane Senholz and Ted from North Central Community Action Program. And Chandra was there too. Yao Yang from the Joseph Project. Dick Holster, the chair of the Wausau Area Apartment Association. Certainly Ben Lee, Jeff Sargent from United Way. So there was a pretty good group of people together, and we, rather than just getting together and talking, we decided to have a facilitated process. So people who are trained in like helping groups identify problems and move towards problem solving. That was folks from the Marathon County Health Department. So we were able to use them over a number of months to really get to the crux of what are the issues around homelessness and how can we best resolve those problems. So through that process, we were able to identify really 5 key factors that we wanted to work towards in our community. And Ben, are we going to talk about those later, or should I talk about those right now?
We are, yeah, we're going to dive in depth to the top 3 priority objectives that we identified.
Okay, so we did identify 5 key factors, and if we're going to talk about those later, then I'll hold off on identifying what those are. But we really needed somebody in our community that could take those factors, provide the leadership necessary to really make progress on those key factors, and that's where the United Way stepped forward and handed off that work to Ben Lee and the United Way to guide us through really working together to work on those key factors and see what we could do to impact homelessness. So that's kind of the really short version of the background and the history of the homelessness task force and some of the work that we've been doing in our community.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. And just to kind of piggyback on what Ben said, one of the really important pieces of that was going through what we call the results-based accountability framework. And we're thankful for the Marathon County Health Department who walked us through that process. And what it allowed us to do was really take all of these different agencies that Ben mentioned and come to one shared purpose and one shared goal, and that you can see is being presented to you in our PowerPoint right now, and it's that all Marathon County residents and families have a stable, regular residence. And then you start diving into, well, how do we accomplish that thing? How do we make sure that that's actually something that we can measure, that we can go out in the community and see that it's working? And you're held accountable to the results that you put up. And so when the health department walked us through that, the first thing we did was identified, who do our partners need to be here? And so I don't think I need to read these all to you. Ben summarized them well, but this is who makes up your the housing task force of Marathon County. So when you look at these different partners there, it's a wide array of individuals who are coming together because they want to solve this issue. And a lot of us have already been familiar with working together in the past. So when we talk about United Way Marathon County taking the lead on this, we work with the police department often. The Salvation Army, North Central Healthcare, Catholic Charities Warming Center. These are all North Central Community Action Program. These are all funded partners of ours and people that we have close relationships with already. And it was really around coming down to this shared goal of how do we move forward with this. And so to give you, and if you want an idea of who specifically are these people, that's going to be on the right hand side of your screen. I broke that down a little bit more granularly for you. So we have members of the city council involved in this. We have Diane Senholz over at North Central Community Action Program. Of course, Tracy Rieger at the Wausau Warming Center. Katie Rosenberg, the mayor of Wausau. Lance Leonard, the Marathon County Administrator. These are all people who we decided needed to be part of this process because if you've seen the video, which you'll all be sent, that the police department put together on the task force, I think one of the things we really needed was we needed people who could make immediate decisions at the table. If we wanted to be able to move forward with some of our objectives, then instead of running things up a chain of command or having to wait to circle back on something for 6 weeks, we had those people right at the table and we could say yes or no. Can we move forward with this, or is this something that we can push forward? And I think it's made all the difference in the world. And it's also hard for me, just as remove me as a United Way employee and look at me as a community member. As a community member, when I look at that list of people, I see a list of doers, of people who like to go out into the community and they like to push the boundaries on what's possible in our community. And so I think as we get into the results and we start talking about the results, what we've seen in the last 4 months of work, it's no surprise that this group of individuals has been able to put up the results that we've been able to put up here. So, and then to just give you a little bit of a, when did this start and where are we now? So just a little bit of a timeline. Again, this was created by Ben in November, December of 2019. And the first thing they did was identify the partners that needed to be part of this. As we moved through to January of 2020, we started the results-based accountability training. We started identifying our objectives and our measurements of success and along with our mission. And those are not necessarily super easy conversations to have. If you look at that list of agencies that are all representing themselves, but all working towards a common goal, everybody wants or has a little bit of a different vision on how we get to the end of that goal and how we accomplish that goal. And so those conversations were intense at times about how we pushed forward with this group. And then of course we started prioritizing our objectives. And as you're all probably well aware, in March of 2020, everything shut down. And so one of the things that stalled us a little bit here was when you look at that list of partners, there's a lot of nonprofit organizations that had a huge part in responding to the pandemic on that list. And so this unfortunately had to take a little bit of a back seat because Tracy needed to move her organization to somewhere where they could safely house individuals that was within social distancing. I myself had to start loading up truckloads of food and hauling them across the county for the Marathon County Hunger Coalition. Everybody got pulled in a different direction, and it was kind of like that until June. And then in June, we got back together and we started setting the strategies. We picked up right where we left off and said, okay, well, here's where we were and now here's where we need to go. And so we started setting strategies. And then that was, probably March, April. Ben and I had a lot of big lofty plans for press conferences and announcements about how this was working. And that all got kind of shoved off the end of the table. And the transition to United Way probably largely went unnoticed, just because we were all trying to keep our heads above water and make sure that our community was cared for at that time. And so with that, once United Way was offered to take over the leadership of this task force, one of the things that we had to talk about was our current involvement in something you've all probably heard of and you're familiar with, and that is the Housing and Homelessness Coalition. What does that look like? How do we reconcile this work with the work that the coalition has prioritized? And before we get into that transition, I'm now going to hand things off to Pam Anderson, who was our longtime chair for the Housing and Homelessness Coalition. And I think we don't have the discussions that we're having today if it weren't for Pam's dedication, if it weren't for Beth Ann's dedication to their chair and vice chair positions in the Housing and Homelessness Coalition. And then, of course, all the members of that coalition. A lot of the people that you see on this call today, Diane Sentholz, Tracy Rieger, they were all part of that coalition and laying the groundwork for what was to come here. And so I'm going to hand it over to Pam right now, and Pam's going to give you a brief history of the coalition and what they accomplished. And then we're just going to move into how this evolved into the Housing Task Force.
Great. Well, thank you, Ben, and thank you everybody for participating in this call today. First thing I would like to do is I'd like to start by saying thank you to the membership of the Housing and Homelessness Coalition for all the work they did addressing the issue of homelessness and identifying gaps and needs, strengthening the existing relationships that we had, and then collaborating together. That was so key. Everybody worked together on this issue, and our main goal was to really help and focus on getting individuals in Marathon County and families into stable housing. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of a history. In 2011, United Way, in partnership with some key stakeholders, started a housing initiative after a Wausau Police Department officer identified a homeless individual during the night and wasn't sure what options were available for this person. And he reached out to United Way to share this experience in this situation. As a result, in 2012, the Housing and Homeless Coalition of Marathon County was formed, and it was formed to create a collaborative network to find solutions, like I had mentioned before, to homelessness and housing challenges. What we were doing was the first priority was really strengthening the shelter system that was located in Marathon County. And as a result, in February of 2013, the Wausau Warming Center opened, and it was managed by Catholic Charities. That was one of our first initiatives and activities and focuses. Then in November of 2015, the coalition signed its 10-year plan to eradicate homelessness in Marathon County. And what we did then was we formed several different committees that all had priority work to do. They worked, I think the first thing that really made an impact was the continuation of all the various organizations that had resources available were working together, and they actually came up with a game plan as to, you know, what everybody could do, who could do what. Lots of organizations in the very beginning weren't sure what all the various nonprofits and organizations could or couldn't do. So we got kind of like a layout of who could help where and do what. And that was very, very successful when it came to addressing the needs of individuals. Then in partnership with the Wausau Police Department, we also implemented a program to provide funding to safely house individuals that might have been found or identified in the middle of the night. Where do they go? What do they do if the shelters are full? We had the Warming Center and we had Salvation Army, and there were nights when both were full. So what happens? A fund was developed with the help of North Central Community Action Program to get those individuals into a safe environment for the evening so that they could then come back to North Central CAP to find out what else is out there, how can they resolve their issues. Then we also wanted to increase access for the community to find out what solutions might be out there for them. So through Salvation Army, an outreach program was established. We had several Project Connect events, which were very similar to something you're going to hear about a little bit later on. It brought all the resources together in one location that people could come to and talk to the various organizations that could help them with whatever their particular issues were. We also started an educational program focusing on employment that was done during the summers to help people with looking for employment. We had the job center participate every week. We had 2 sessions a week, and they really developed a relationship with people, letting them know how to, do their resumes, interview, look for employment, and that kind of thing. So then, in addition, we also saw a couple other housing initiatives start. One is Beyond Shelter, which was developed and put and implemented by Catholic Charities. The other one was implemented by St. Vincent de Paul, and that was called the Family Housing Program. So we continue to identify gaps. We know that there are still gaps out there. We know that the need is still there. We try to increase community awareness of homelessness, because a lot of people just don't realize that what might bring somebody into being homeless. It can be anything. So one day you might be working, the next day you might lose your job. In this environment today, I think we're seeing a lot of challenges for people. So what I feel is that the recently formed Housing Task Force now moves us on to continue our work of eradicating homelessness with an expanded focus. We have many of the same people at the table. You're going to really see the work that has gone into the task force. It's going to take us to the next step. And I have to say, I appreciate that, because it again expands collaboration, which is so key to individuals. If you tell somebody to go here and then go there, are they going to do it? But if you have a number of different organizations under one roof, and you can actually walk them to the various organizations, that's ideal. And that's what it's going to take. So with that, I want to thank everybody who's on the call or the meeting today for your participation and your interest in learning about the task force. And I look forward, quite honestly and personally, to the future that's ahead for us to help us reduce homelessness in the Marathon County. So with that, Ben, I think I'll turn it back to you. Or one of you, Bens. Oh, Ben, I think you're on mute.
I changed my view, so I'm not sure if Ben Lee is trying to talk and he's on mute or not.
Yeah, I see him trying to talk, but I think he's muted.
Oh, there he is. Well, I think Pam made a good point in regards to one of the exciting ventures that's going on in our community. I see Kevin Noel is on this is in the meeting here, and he's worked with the Greenheck Foundation and Brian Gumness to work on the Community Partners Campus, which is the what Pam was just describing, a location where we can house a lot of our local nonprofit organizations that are working on homelessness issues. So when somebody has is in homelessness, it's hard, like Pam said, for them to go to the neighbor's place and get services, and then have to go across town to the Salvation Army, to Catholic Charities, or to St. Vincent de Paul. It's all over town. It's hard for them to get from place to place to get the services they need. And so Kevin's vision for Community Partners Campus is really exciting and should be a great addition to our community. And I got the email today that said they're about halfway to their fundraising goal, and with those two individuals responsible for raising that money, I'm sure that our community is going to provide those donations to get us to that goal. So that's really exciting.
So that's my introduction.
Sure.
Okay, good. So Community Partners Campus continues down the road to developing the property at 364 Grand Avenue. And we're in week 7 of what Brian and I thought our 8-week capital campaign to raise a lot of money. And I might as well just start with that. You know, we need 5.4 million estimated to build out the facility in order to house approximately 8 nonprofits that have been identified to become the first original partners in our hopefully phase 1 project. We are currently at about 2.7 million, so we're about halfway. We found out that it's going to take a long time for certain boards and individuals to really commit funds to Community Partners Campus. These agendas are taking a while to actually turn into funds. So we're going to extend our campaign, and therefore we're going to extend our offer to purchase on the building until we can come up with at least 4.8 million. We feel that in the next 4 weeks we'll be able to accomplish that goal. So we continue to work toward that. I can't tell you how many meetings we have. We have, it seems like 2 or 3 a day. And it's from design to working with our contractor, which is probably more news. We interviewed several contractors to work alongside our construction team and our design team for Community Partners Campus. And we've selected Myron Construction as the general contractor. Myron has been very involved in our day-to-day meetings as we go through the design process with our individual partners. Our goal is to make everyone as comfortable as possible in the new facility so that they're capable of fulfilling their missions at least as well as they do now, and hopefully better. We really look forward to being able to start construction. Our goal is still to be open in November of this year. And it's going to take a combined effort of the entire community to come up with the funding necessary to build out this vision for the greater Wausau area. That's about all the news that I have at this time, but I'm really happy to be a part of this committee, and I'm really happy for the support and feedback that I get from our community on the vision of Community Partners Campus. It's going to be a great asset. We're all looking forward to having medical care and ending food insecurity as well as shelter. So thanks for allowing me to be a part of the committee.
Thanks, Kevin. And also, along with just the enhanced coordination of services, also I apologize. The mayor muted me, and that was it for me. I had no way to unmute myself. So if Katie Rosenberg mutes you in this WebEx, you're done for the night.
I've been there before. Trust me, I have been there.
Yeah. Along with not only the Community Partners Campus, but we know that having that campus on a bus line in a centralized location is going to be such a huge benefit to people who are trying to receive those services. We often paint it in a picture like this. If you are somebody who is unhoused, you have limited income, and you also have the day to figure out, are you going to make it up to the warming center in time? Are you going to go to Salvation Army? How are you going to eat that day? How are you going to make sure that you don't freeze out in the cold that day? The last thing that you're probably thinking about is, how can I get up to North Central Community Action Program, but then also get over to the neighbor's place, but then also get over to this organization, but then also make sure I get back over by Tracy at the warming center so I have a bed to stay in tonight, when you're trying to survive. And when you can have all of those services under one roof, you're eliminating a really big barrier for individuals when it comes to 6 different stops, and most of them are not on the bus line. And so not only are we talking about just, you know, the campus itself, but the coordination between the county and the city, to make sure that we have transportation for these individuals over there. You know, and that's why you'll find that a lot of us sit on different committees at the county and the city level. I personally sit on the transportation coordination committee, so that we can advocate for, you know, more bus routes for individuals, for bus lines that go to the places where individuals need them to go to. You know, I'm a Wausau citizen. I live in the city of Wausau in city limits, and I'm 1.8 miles away from the nearest bus stop. And when you consider somebody who has to go to the neighbor's place and get groceries for the week, they're quite a ways away from the nearest bus stop there. And so they've got to walk through whatever weather or whatever conditions there are to be able to get to the neighbor's place, and then walk back down with all of those bags. If any of you have ever volunteered there, all of those bags that get handed out, that's a long walk with, you know, anywhere from 25 to 50 pounds of groceries. And so there's more enhanced coordination happening at that level. But then we're also bringing in new partners. And that's the Wausau Police Department and North Central Healthcare and the coordination that they've had in opening up the McClellan House. And it's the better coordination between the Salvation Army, the Warming Center, and North Central Community Action Program that is making sure when individuals show up and maybe a shelter's at capacity, we know the process in place to get them a hotel voucher for the night, or to make sure that we can get them where they need to go. And I think a lot of those enhanced coordinations are what reflects the current environment that we're in. And that's something I just wanted to recognize real quick. And I'm going to ask Tracy Rieger to offer any insight she might have on it. But this season, we are seeing a reduction in shelter nights, and our shelters are not at capacity throughout the season. And so that tells us that a little bit, at least, of what we're doing is working. And Tracy, do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I will say that I do think that we are moving the needle as a community in terms of homelessness. I've been actively in this position for 3 years, and I can honestly say this year has been the first year that I've seen a turn for the better. We have not been at capacity even in the coldest days of the season so far, which has been amazing to me. I am in a very close collaboration with Eric Lemeron and Monica. And I can tell you that collaboration is providing a lot of success. And, you know, Eric and I are able to talk frequently as he's in my office here at Catholic Charities. We meet clients here together. We have daily conversations about things that are going on in shelter and clients that may need to utilize Monica and Eric's help. So I can tell you that collaboration has been the game changer, I'll call it, in our homelessness population. And I am definitely seeing a move in the right direction. So I'm really excited about this and look forward to continued success. And thank you, Ben Bliven. I know I've said this a million times and you're probably sick of hearing it, but I will say that this idea is brilliant and it is absolutely what this community needed. So thank you again for offering us Eric and Monica to partner and help us get through some of these challenges.
Awesome. Thanks, Tracy. And so that's a really good segue into what I personally think is probably the most exciting development and something that we very much believed in. We believed was the solution to starting to move the needle on this. And we're starting to see that now. And so, and that's the increase of outreach case management. And we've long sat at tables and said over and over and over again that the way to reach the unhoused population in our community was constant contact, constant reaching out, was to meet them where they are, not to wait for them to come in and take our services. And so one of the things that being able to bring this group of people together was we were able to have the city of Wausau and the Wausau Police Department lend us Eric Lemerand. And I say lend because, you know, we don't know if Eric is always going to be with us, but we still have work to do to convince Ben Bliven of that. But we know for right now, it was a pilot, you know, it was a pilot program and we wanted to run it, and we just wanted to see if our hunch was correct. You know, if we had somebody who was reaching out to these individuals all the time, then what would that look like? Would we be able to start moving the needle on getting people into the services that they need? Would we be able to connect them with family members? Would we be able to reunite them? And if I'm being totally honest, the results that we've had so far have completely blown away any expectation that I had. I thought it would go well. My fingers were crossed. But I think just in the last 4 months, and Eric is really going to dive into these results, and I'm going to put them up on the screen so you can read them. I couldn't have envisioned this type of service being so well received and going so well in our community. And so this brings us to our second objective, which is outreach case management. And I'm going to hand things over to Officer Eric Lemerand. And Eric, I want you to give everybody just a brief introduction about your experience and why you're so passionate about this. But then Eric is going to walk you through what he does on a daily basis. And as he does that, you'll notice on the screen that we've identified 51 individuals as chronically homeless or near homeless. And to date, as of today, Eric has found solutions, Eric and Monica, I should say, have found solutions or have reunited or have rehoused 18 of those individuals in less than 4 months worth of work. And so to be able to move the needle like that at just under half of the people we've identified in Wausau as chronically homeless is a phenomenal job. And I can't say that enough. And so Eric, I'll hand it over to you and walk through some of your data points here and just walk the group here through what it is that you see working.
Sure. Thanks, Ben. That introduction and Tracy for your kind words. You know, we're just here doing, or I am just here doing what needs to be done for our community, along with Monica's partnership. And I don't know if everybody saw, Monica Meinsberg is my partner through the healthcare center. So she's the tie to AODA and mental health treatment or assistance. So she's an integral part of this process too. You know, it really just started with how do we make this impact? And without having any prior experience necessarily doing this, I grew up with my parents being pastors of the Salvation Army. They spent, I believe, 7 wonderful years here in Wausau, running the Salvation Army here. And so I was kind of raised in this sort of environment where we're meeting people's needs and we're really just getting down to the basics with people and how does a community meet that and what do we do for them? What do they need? You know, it's not what we think they need, it's what they actually need. And sometimes that's the difference. You know, basically just how do we do this? Well, let's go talk to people with that prior knowledge of really knowing that it's up to them. It's not up to us. And who are you? Why are you homeless? What do you think I can help with? If I had a magic wand and I could wave it and you wouldn't be homeless, what would that look like? You know, those are some pretty honest conversations that I'm having with people. And initially I think it was a little off-putting, especially being a law enforcement officer. But really being there for them and listening to them and trying to understand their situation makes a lot of the difference. You know, sometimes it's I've lost my job, or I have an addiction problem. I've got family problems. I've got a criminal history. There's a lot of reasons why we have homeless issues in Wausau, and chronic homeless issues more so. There's several, I would say, different types of homelessness. And we're really targeting that chronic homeless individual who just can't seem for whatever they've tried to get out of homelessness. And so, you know, initially, even when I started, I thought it was kind of like, okay, let's build this ladder. Let's climb this ladder with them, where we start at step one and then move to the next step. And as I got deeper and deeper into it, I really discovered that it's not a step ladder at all, and it's not a linear problem. It's really kind of a spider web problem where, for certain individuals, you're taking a little out of this barrier and a little out of this barrier, and then maybe tomorrow we try getting a little more out of this barrier and just working the barriers together to resolve their problem. Because it's just not it's not always crystal clear cut. And each individual has their own barriers, and every individual is different. And that's one of the biggest hurdles too, is you can't just take a common tool to everybody. You really got to help each individual at their basic needs. So in doing that, then I identified down kind of in the Big Bull Falls Park area where many of them tend to gather, is where I talk to them. And that's me going to them. I don't ask them to come to me because, again, we've tried that and that doesn't work well in some cases. So let's do the outreach. What do you need? What can I help you with? What sort of issues do you think you have? And that's where the 51 individuals came from. Some of them weren't homeless, but those people that were near homeless, and so we want to try and prevent that too. We were able to initially help 3 individuals with treatment. One of those individuals has continued their success in their sobriety, which leads me to, as you're resolving these barriers with these individuals, you really have to understand that you're going to come up with some fails, I guess I would say. It's you try something, it doesn't work, so you really have to kind of re-gear and try something else. If you're not ready for those failures or the disappointments, then it makes it a lot harder. So as we have those disappointments, we say, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's try something else. I think it's most important to just keep trying with these individuals, because too many times in their life, they've had people just say, okay, well, I tried and I can't do anything, so I guess you're on your own. And, you know, if you think of something, come see me. They typically don't have those kind of resources, whether they don't have the skills to use those resources, they don't know where the resources are at. And that kind of ties into the community partnership campus. Even when we resolve these individuals' problems or barriers, we still have to have a constant upkeep with them. You know, constant attention, or, hey, have you done this? Have you followed up with this? I have an individual who I've been able to help focus and get on the right track, but then I talked to them a week later and they've done the exact opposite of what we talked about. As a facilitator, that's really very discouraging. But again, I got to remember that, hey, these people may not have the tools that I have. They may not have the follow through that I have because they've been through trauma or AODA or, you know, whatever their situation is. And to remember that we just have to keep trying with them. And as you try more things, you get more responses from them and they get a little further down their track. You know, sometimes it's 1 step forward, 1 step back, 1 step forward, 3 steps back. But as long as there's some sort of forward momentum, that's really kind of what we focus on, so that we can stay positive and help them. We have 4 male individuals at our residence on McClellan Street. Those are ones that Monica and I, through having those conversations initially, realized that they're in a spot that we can really help them, and we have tools to resolve some of their issues. And it's a daily thing where we have to keep up with them, go visit them, help them with appointments. That's really kind of Monica's, I would say, what her part is with all of this is she has those skills. She has the resources for the mental health and the AODA. So I allow her to just kind of take care of that. And of course, as she needs things and needs help with stuff, I'm more than happy to come over there, but I just don't have those abilities. So her partnership is very important to this whole process. Out of those 4 individuals, one of them has been through medical detox. All of them but one are starting jobs. 2 of them are starting jobs fairly quickly, like this week or next week. One of them within probably a week or 2, and then the 4th one has applied for some jobs. In doing that process and going through those steps, we've understood that there's some other barriers that he needs to overcome. So we've sort of put that on the back burner this minute so that we could help him with those. And that's kind of one of the other things that we're up against is we go, okay, we think this is the answer. And we try that and we go, well, wait a second, now this issue is showing up, or this barrier all of a sudden becomes visible. So, all right, let's stop what we're doing there and tend to this. And again, it goes back to that kind of spider web sort of resource usage. We have been able to drive 2 females to other communities in the state where they've spoken to me about their family, how long they've been away. Both of them were like 5 or 6 years from being with their family. So I was able to reach out, connect with their family, have some communication with them and some conversations about their loved one. And within probably 2 or 3 weeks, we set up enough resources that we were able to bring them back to the family where they currently are, and doing well from what I know. One male I was working with wasn't getting a lot of forward movement, and then all of a sudden he was gone after I'd communicated with his family for a little while. He found his own way to a different state, Colorado, and reunited with his family. And that was probably a couple weeks before I even found out. So some of that's just kind of instilling in them like, hey, this is your family. They love you. They want to have you by them. And it was enough for him to do it himself. Last week, Tracy and I went to California. We had a female in town who had been in Wisconsin for around 14 years and grew up in Wisconsin, but spent most of her adult life in California. She had had a lot of criminal justice issues in and out of jail, court, fines, probation, and they were really starting to be her barrier, her biggest barrier. So I asked her if she would be willing to work with me. She, of course, said yes. I promised her on day probably 1 that if you work with me and you help me help you, I will get you to California. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but if that's your goal, then let's let that be our goal. Worked within the criminal justice system with her defense attorneys, the district attorney's office, probation, to try and come up with a creative solution to resolve her criminal justice problems, because it's not going to benefit her and it really doesn't benefit our community. The crimes that were committed were fairly low-level crimes. So we did that. Took probably about 4 months. At one point, she had tried treatment. That wasn't the answer she was looking for. She hated living in Wisconsin. She wanted to be back in California, and she just kept telling me that. And then obviously I look at that and go, okay, well, that's the biggest barrier. So if she can't be successful here, how do we as a community get her to where she can be successful? Because ultimately that's what matters. As of last Friday, Tracy Rieger and I were able to escort her out to California and drop her off at a facility that I found just cold calling them, wondering, hey, I have this female, here's her problems, here's her barriers, here's what she says she thinks would be good for her. Will you take her? After probably the 50th place, and I should back up a second. Rhonda Zastro from the jail also helped me. She's a social worker for the Marathon County Jail. She also had some knowledge of this and assisted me. So after we called about 50 places, finally we found this one, worked through the court systems, and then last Friday we were able to take her to California. probably the most rewarding part of this position is just being able to see these people feeling like true members of our community. The only word I can use to describe it is fantastic, but that doesn't do it any justice because they've been pushed aside so many times. They've been felt like they're not worth it so many times by communities, by our community sometimes. So for someone to sit down with them and say, "Hey, you matter to us, and we want to help you," that really says a lot to them, and it gets that buy-in. Um, I told her, I pointed out the window as we were flying into California, into the Los Angeles area. I said, "Look, there's palm trees. There's the sun. Look at the clouds. It looks warm down there. It looks like you're home." She got teary-eyed and emotional and said, "Yeah, yeah, I know. I'm home. I can't believe it." And for Tracy and I, it was phenomenal just to see that joy. I've never seen that spark in her, and I've known her for probably about 4 years working at the police department. I can't tell you the emotions that Tracy and I felt, that this woman felt, and to drop her off and make that connection then with the treatment facility and say, "Here she is. Go be well. Go do what you need to do to get your life better." And I said, "You really, there's not a lot of barriers you have left that they can't help you with. You and I have resolved the rest. So really, I know you're going to do well." She said, "Absolutely. I can't wait." I got a voicemail from her yesterday. The tone in her voice, again, is a tone I've never heard from her. You could see her smiling through this voicemail. It was crazy, but it was so wonderful. So, that's the reward that I get. That's the reward that Tracy gets, and the other members of our community that assist these individuals, knowing that we've changed this person's life for the better. As police officers, sometimes we don't always get to see that. So, that's the good work that we're doing. And that's really one person's story. I could probably tell you at least 3 or 4 more, where we're making direct impacts in people's lives. And it's great. And it really, what it says is we're a community that cares about our community members, every one of them. And so I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm enjoying reaching out to these individuals, and just all the partnerships that we have. We have a wonderful community members, and community members who can't wait to give of their time, money, efforts, whatever we need. I can't thank you all enough.
I can just add on to that. I know it's a great story that Eric just shared about the woman that he and Tracy took out to California. But I mean, the amount of work that goes into that effort is tremendous. And so to have the resources in our community that can spend the time necessary to really make those arrangements is really incredible. And so I think you can hear Eric's heart coming through in this conversation. I think he's a great person for this position, and some people might be saying, why in the world do we have a police officer that is playing this role in our community? And I think that's a fair question. Just in that one case that Eric just talked about, the woman that he escorted out to California, she's had a tremendous amount of contact with the police department, with the criminal justice system. And so, sometimes as many as 6 times in one day, police have been called to various behaviors where she's acting out in her community, being disorderly as a result of some AODA issues. And so, it really is helpful. It's a great story because it's treating the person as a person the way they deserve to be treated and getting them to a place where they can be successful. But from a resource perspective, for our decision makers, our policy makers in our community, having the resources like Eric and Monica and all of our nonprofits that are supported by our community makes a huge difference. And without those resources and the commitment from people in our community and our policymakers in terms of budget, we wouldn't be able to do that work. So it's a really critical thing, a really critical opportunity for us. And, so just 2 more points about Eric. If you look over his right shoulder, so it's on the left side of your screen, you'll see the award hanging on his wall. And you probably can't read it, but it's a Don Ryder Bridge Builder Award. And so that's one of the reasons Eric is so great in this position, is because he's excellent at building relationships, and that is an award he got, a couple of years ago. And then I would also add that, our perspective is that we aren't going to just have a conversation with somebody, ask them where they want to go, buy them a bus ticket, and send them on their way, because that doesn't set that person up for success. And I will tell you, I know from a lot of personal experience that law enforcement agencies and other communities have done that and have that perspective. We've seen police officers and from other communities in our region bringing people and dropping them off here in Wausau because it is a drain on resources in some communities, which means that we need to add resources and be able to support people much better than we are right now. And so our perspective is, not just to buy them a ticket and send them on their way, but to make sure that where they're going, if their family is somewhere else, if there's a place where they're going to be successful, that we arrange that and make sure that they have those resources available to them and supports in the place that they're going to. And that's just, I think that's just being person-centered and making sure that they have what they need to be successful, even if it takes a lot more effort and money. And then lastly, I would just add that the Green Heck Foundation, in terms of our housing task force, has been very generous and helped us with some COVID grants to be able to rent the house on McClellan Street and supply some additional funding for this program. So I appreciate the Green Heck Foundation. So I just wanted to add those couple of points there.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Ben. And one thing I'll point out when it comes to Eric's work and Monica's work is that finding solutions for people that are unhoused isn't as simple as just finding them a house or finding them an apartment. And I hope Eric's story highlights that, because when we're talking about helping people overcome barriers like a past criminal record or excessive evictions, or sobriety. Those are no small tasks. And it happens every single day. So it's not just, hey, here's this empty apartment, we'll give it to you. Like, one thing that this task force really tries to focus on is while we try and meet the basic needs of individuals and what they need while they're unhoused, we try to get to the root of the problem and what's causing that homelessness, right? It's rarely ever as simple as, well, I lost my home, so I'm homeless. It's usually mental health issues, there's financial stability issues, or there's substance abuse issues, or past criminal record issues. And so what I always like about these stories is, Eric, I get to hear these stories firsthand. Eric and I connect on a regular basis, and I get to hear what he's working on. And it's always a super individualistic approach to the individual. And that's what's key here. There is no blanket approach that's going to work for every single homeless person that you come across. And you need to take the time and you need to get to learn them and understand and uncover what is the root of the problem here. What is causing this behavior? Eric, the woman that he was talking about that they were just able to fly out to California. Myself, Ben Bliven, Tracy Rieger, and Katie Rosenberg, all almost a year ago to this day, met her under the Scott Street Bridge. We got her a COVID test. We got her into a hotel. We got her food from the neighbor's place. And within 3 or 4 days, she was back out on the street. And that's the reality of the situation. And so I love that story because someone stuck with her for the entirety of the year. And that was Eric and Monica. And they stuck with her and they stuck with her and they stuck with her and they stuck with her. And now she's where she wants to be. She's getting the help that she needs, but it took a year to get there. And so I always like to remind people and just highlight what Ben just said is that the amount of hours and effort that go into just one success story are massive. They're massive. And so this is why we're excited about these partnerships, because we had a hunch they would work. We've researched what other communities have done and what they're saying works. And this is what we came up with. To segue into that, into kind of what Ben was talking about, as the partnerships in the Green Heck Foundation. One of our other objectives is to treat untreated mental health and substance abuse issues, and really find the right solution for individuals. And I'm going to lean on Ben. I'm not sure if Michael Loy is on the call. If he is, I'm happy to have him chime in because I know he's part of this partnership as well. But I'm going to lean on Ben a little bit about this McClellan House. And the whole idea here is that we can offer a temporary housing solution to individuals while we find the right path for them. And it's comprehensive and it meets that individual's needs. It doesn't just say, well, you're homeless, so you must have an alcohol problem. It's not always the case. You're homeless, so you must have a drug problem. That's also not always the case. And so what we do with this house is we're able to offer immediate housing. You may have heard the term of it called housing first. And what it does is it offers a roof over their head, and then it allows the partners who are overseeing that house to start chipping away at some of the things that might be at the root of their behavioral patterns that are causing them to be unhoused. And so Ben, I'll hand it over to you to just give a little bit of recap on how this house works, why it's valuable to the community.
Sure, I'll give a high level overview. I would certainly, if Monica, if you'd like to talk about that work, I think you probably have a ground level view much better than I do. I can talk about it from a high level overview. We're talking with Michael Loy about some of the concerns and what we could do to impact the chronic homelessness issue. Michael mentioned a program called Assertive Community Treatment. And so this program, the idea is, kind of what Ben had just talked about, which is, make sure that people have their basic needs met. They have they have a roof over their head. They have, food to eat, and they're warm. And from there, then you can start working on some of the mental health and AODA issues that oftentimes exist with individuals who are experiencing homelessness. And so that's where the idea came from. And so, we were able to work with, like I said, the Green Heck Foundation to find funding to pay rent for a home so that we could, Eric and Monica go and build relationships with individuals, ask them to participate in this assertive community treatment program where we'll find a place for you to stay. And then, we will have somebody, Monica, who will be a daily touch point with you, who has the ability to connect you to all sorts of different resources in our community. And that, that can be, resources around AODA and mental health, but it also can be resources around building job skills and interviewing skills and any skill that's necessary so that you can, we can give you a hand in building those skills to eventually find a job and find a place where you can stay on your own. And so there's a lot of components to that. I don't know if Monica or even Eric, if one of you would like to talk a little bit more about what goes on at the McClellan House.
Monica, we'd love to hear a little bit more insight from you. I know you're kind of like a silent phantom in this work, and you do so much heavy lifting around it. And so if you could give us just a little bit of insight on the work that goes on in that house, that'd be great.
She unmuted. That's great.
Oh man, you guys are making me talk. All right. So specifically at the McClellan House, as Eric had stated before, we get to know them, we get to know their stories. And I think the most difficult with this community that we're working with is a lot of them are in denial about having mental health problems, or don't think they're severe enough to the point where they need extra assistance. And, that comes down to if they also have AODA concerns. Is it the chicken before the egg? Did the AODA cause the mental health problems? Did, and which nobody will ever truly know if they haven't been diagnosed before that. So it does take a lot of just getting to know them and being there for them, and then building that trust for them to be like, okay, I guess, maybe I should check it out and just see what this is about. For Eric and I, that's a lot of just like not pushing. We find if we push them too hard, they've chosen their life on the streets over homes several times. Not necessarily chosen, but due to their addiction or just not wanting to follow certain rules. So at the house specifically, actually one of the gentlemen that never has really had issues with AODA, his main concern was his mental health, and he just was not able to get the medication he needed. He wasn't able to get in to see a psychiatrist or a therapist or any of that. So it was pretty much exactly like the first thing he needed. He wanted to be on his medications. He's like, I stopped taking my medications. I wasn't able to go to work. I couldn't get out of bed, stuff like that. So got him into some psychiatrists and stuff like that right away in therapy. Then some of the others had mentioned that they used to be on medication and they would go and see what it was all about. And if it helped, and figure that out. I would say one of our biggest successes thus far, one of them, is a gentleman who has been denying any mental health issues for the longest time. Very chronic alcoholic. Actually, just recently we were able to for the last couple of months, he's kind of been able to just do what he's been doing. And we kind of gave him like a good talk into about like, hey, where do you see your life going after this? What do you want to do? Where do you want to be? And he's kind of told us that he didn't want to be on the streets. He didn't want to die out there. He likes working. He wants to be a hard worker, but he can't do that thing because he drinks. And then we kind of worked back from there and came to find out that he struggles with a lot of anxiety and trauma in the past. And actually today he went to his psychiatry appointment and he's like, well, if I'm going to see a psychiatrist and potentially start my medication again, I think I'd like to see a therapist too, because just medication isn't going to help. And it's basically like he came up with that on his own. Like Eric and I had planted seeds here and there, but so it's just time and patience and being there for them that's really been the most beneficial. I'm there a couple hours a day mostly, so.
Awesome.
And I would add to that, as we kind of cycle through what these gentlemen need, Monica and I are fairly new to this. It's more so for her background, but even still, this whole pilot program initiative, and okay, this isn't working. That gentleman, we're having a hard time with. Okay, how do we get to him? How do we help him? How do we let him know that we're here to help? But there's some things he needs to do. So we established that, hey, we're just going to go spend some time there. We're just going to deepen that relationship. I'm going to talk to him every day, whether it's stopping by the house every morning when I get to work and having conversations or giving him a phone call, but really showing him that, hey, we're waist deep in this also. And we're not asking you to do something we won't help you with. We just need your participation, and that buy-in is important.
Awesome. Thank you. And so I think we also couple that with what you see on the screen here, right? Transitional housing programs that exist in our community, and then identifying the programs that we know are successful. They might not be for everybody, but we know they work. We know that they have a foundation of success. So, an example of that we have listed is the Hope House Sober Living Program. Looking at what's already in our community and saying, how can we expand that? How can we make that more beneficial to more people? Because when I look at our community, we have the right puzzle pieces to make sure that we can kind of create a roadmap for these individuals, and it's just leveraging what's there. And then, of course, outside of everything we've talked about today, one of the things that I think can't go unnoticed is we can combat homelessness and combat homelessness and combat homelessness every single day of the year. But I think something that goes unnoticed in our community is prevention. the work around prevention that goes into homelessness, keeping families in the home that they're currently in, making sure, especially in a pandemic year, making sure that we can help people pay rent, things like that. And so I want to take just a quick minute here and toss it over to Diane Senholz, who is the Executive Director of the North Central Community Action Program. And she's going to give you just a quick overview of the prevention efforts that we have in our community, and how valuable that is to make sure that that population of people who is unhoused does not continue to grow.
Okay, thank you, Ben. So first, I just want to talk a little bit about our EHAF program. That's like the original collaborative that existed in Marathon County 20 years ago. And that collaborative is composed of Catholic Charities, the Salvation Army, and the Women's Community, and North Central CAP. So for 20 years, we've been providing emergency rental assistance through that program, which is funded by the United Way. And that's huge. So that's one of our biggest programs right there. But in addition to that, we have a lot of other prevention programming available from the state and the federal folks. So, and the biggest one right now was WRAP, and now the new one coming out today, and you'll see it on the news, is WERA, Wisconsin Emergency Rental Assistance Program, which is very much like WRAP. They were going to make some changes to it, and that's why they named it something else, but really it's very much like WRAP, and it can provide a lot more assistance. I mean, with WRAP, we provided $477,000 to this community to keep people housed, and that was huge. We expect to double that with this WERA program. So it is huge to keep people in their homes and to keep families stable, because the children in those families and those households, and individuals too, but children really are the future of our community. And, you know, they need to be healthy, they need to be safe, they need to be in an environment where they can, you know, be their best. So, you know, that's a large focus of what we do. But we also have a tenant-based rental assistance program that helps people who are homeless, and it can also help prevent homelessness. And that's been huge. I mean, we've got like 20 families in that right now, 22 families, I believe. So that's a very good thing for this community as well. And then we do have our PSH program. So that's probably why, Tracy, your shelter isn't quite full. We do have a full program right now of the PSH folks. So I know I veered off a little bit of prevention, but I just wanted to mention that we do have that PSH program, and that's going to be going on for another about 4 years for sure. Did
Awesome.
you want me to, did you want me to touch on anything else, or is that?
No, that was a great overview. Appreciate that. And, you know, we work closely with the city of Wausau, with Community Development Authority and Diane, as dollars, whether it be through the CARES Acts are coming through into the community. We work closely on making sure that those get allocated out for things like rental assistance. You know, one of the last formal things that the Housing and Homelessness Coalition did before it became the Housing Task Force was it donated $25,000 to the Community Foundation Fund to be used for rental assistance for Wausau residents. And that's just, when you think of those resources and those the way we can leverage those partnerships, it's just outstanding the reach that this group of people has in such a short amount of time. And so the last thing I'll do is, as the person who is appointed to lead this organization, is I'll say I'm hardly a leader here. I get to sit at the table every time we meet with a group of community leaders, people who care about this community, and they make my job really easy here. I get to come and I get to just kind of like make sure there's an agenda and make sure everyone stays on track, and then they take it and they go run and do the hard work and roll their sleeves up. And so I'm just extremely proud of this group of individuals. I think they're doing amazing work in really the short time that we've been operating under the strategies that we set. And I think as we look into 2021 and we look into the fall, where we'll have another community conversation with everybody here, I'm really looking forward to what we get to share with you then. So with that, we have some time. I also intend on giving you some time back to your night. So if there are any questions, we're open to them now. I'm happy to field them or assign them to the correct individual think can give you the most thorough response. So if you have a question, take yourself off mute and go ahead and ask.
Or you can feel free to type it in the chat if you don't want to speak. That's fine too. We're monitoring that.
Ben, while we're waiting for questions, I can just briefly say, a lot of people say, well, why a police officer? Why is that necessary? And we kind of alluded to it a little before. Fortunately, with this uniform, I have a little bit of influence that I can wield to help these people. So, not for my own benefit, but to benefit others. I have access to the criminal justice system. I have access to services that other people don't. I know as Monica and I work through our process, she'll call people and say, "Hi, this is Monica from the healthcare center," and the response is typically different than when I call and say, "Hi, this is Officer Lemeron from the Wausau Police Department." They tend to, unfortunately for this purpose, they tend to pay more attention to me. But so then I go, okay, well, this is useful. This I can use to help people, which is what it's for. And I can get answers that other people can't get, or other facilitators in the community can't get, because I have a title before my name. And so, it becomes imperative to this task when I'm breaking down barriers just by the uniform that I display or the badge that I display, and people get problems solved, and that's really beneficial. Whether it's getting somebody a birth certificate at the courthouse who doesn't have an ID because they need a birth certificate to get the ID. We're in a sort of a chicken and egg scenario. I can go there in uniform and say, "Trust me, this is who this person is," and I'll vouch for them. And I've been able to do that, or taking them to then get their ID, and there's a big long line, and the person at the DMV, without me asking, says, "Come here, let me help you." Since I'm not doing anything right this second, that way I'm sure you have more things to do with your day, and you too can get out of here and go do what else you need to do. So, this uniform allows me to harness that to help people, and it's really amazing to do that in that special way.
Thanks for that insight, Eric. Go ahead, Ben.
I was just going to say, Beth Ann asked a question in the chat that says, what can we as community members do to ensure that the Wausau PD and North Central Healthcare outreach continues? And I think that's a great question. It's not something that I don't think we talked about this earlier, but when Michael Loy and I talked about the assertive community treatment program and getting Eric and Monica involved on a full-time basis, we decided that we would allocate resources on a kind of a pilot test drive basis. And so that was back in October, and we initially said, well, let's try it for 3 months and see what happens, see if there's success and that kind of thing. And so obviously we're more than 3 months into this program. It's pretty obvious, I think, with the success that Erica and Monica have had. So we're definitely interested in finding a way to continue our efforts. So at the same, so what we did at the police department is, we plucked, Eric's a patrol officer. We plucked him out of the patrol officer ranks and asked him to do this full time. So we're already down 3 officers that we have 3 vacancies, and we're looking to hire for those positions. Plus Eric is in this position and isn't a patrol officer. So that makes us about 10% of our patrol officers down. And so that's a concern that I have. We just need to find a way to justify and find dollars to be able to keep our side of things going. I'm committed to that. But I would encourage anybody who sees the program as successful and an integral part of our community response to homelessness, to reach out to your elected officials and make sure they know that it's important to you. I know Mayor Rosenberg is supportive of the program. She's been involved in the program, but your city council members and Mayor Rosenberg, let them know what you think, or let me know what you think. I'm committed to the program. It's just a matter of figuring out how to best deploy our resources, because it does take away from our other efforts in our patrol bureau. So that's a great question. So thank you. We're working on it. I guess that's the long and short of it.
Well, and Chief, if I could step in real quick too,
Sure.
We have, I want to make sure I have that question right. I apologize. We have been able to do what we've done because of the community's generosity. So the funds that were used to get this woman home were all from the community. So, things like that. And we're not asking for donations, but we have a few ways to help. I always encourage people, if you can't donate items that may be needed for the house or other homeless individuals or financially, the areas the agencies like the Salvation Army, Neighbors Place, Catholic Charities, they always need volunteers. And when you volunteer for them, you're also helping us.
Awesome. Thanks for that insight, guys. I don't have anything to add to that question. Ben really covered that one well. Thanks for the question, Beth Ann. Any other questions out there?
I see, Sarah, thank you for posting that video. So you see that Facebook link in the chat. That's a video that we created, highlighting some of the work that is being done in the Housing Task Force. So if you click on that link, it'll take you to that Facebook video and get some more information about that. And then I see Sandy, that's a good question too. She says, is there any program aimed at female housing? Currently, it appears that there are only male housing, given the fact that many women leave homes due to trauma or addiction due to trauma. Reuniting them with family members cannot always be the go-to. Is there a housing project in the works? And that's a great observation. And there are a number of resources in our community. I think the primary one is the women's community, certainly for females who are experiencing homelessness that is a result of trauma at home, domestic violence, sexual assault, and that is an opportunity for women in our community. And I would say too that we don't have, in terms of our assertive community treatment program, we did have money just to rent one house. So we decided to use that for males because that's the predominant sex that's involved in homelessness in our community right now. But that doesn't mean that we can't help and find resources and think outside the box to help women who are experiencing homelessness and want to participate in our assertive community treatment program. So, if there are women who that you want to be involved, and Eric and Monica are out there on a daily basis, along with many others in our community, identifying individuals who want to participate in the program. We'll find ways to get that done. One of our approaches with Eric and Monica is not to have a ton of restrictions on how they operate, and that's intentional. That is, hey guys, build relationships and figure out a way to solve each individual's problems and remove barriers. And so, if there's women out there in our community that want to participate in this program, we'll figure it out. I have great confidence in Eric and Monica and all of the other resources in our community working together to help and resolve that issue for women. So there isn't a specific home right now that we've rented that we can put them in, but we'll figure that out as we go, and potentially there will be a resource down the line similar to that on McClellan Street. That's our goal.
And I'll
And
also
if I
add to
can-
that, real
I'm
quick.
sorry.
The Salvation Army does offer transitional living program for women, and then there is discussion. About a year ago, there was data supporting the fact that we needed more treatment options for women, and so there was discussion, and there still is research going on with North Healthcare and the Sober Living Program, along with so the Hope House Sober Living Program adopting the apricity model. which is something that serves both men and women, as something that they may look into. And then, of course, as Ben mentioned, the women's community, which is, just that, can't say enough about that staff over there and just how great a community partners they are. So I just wanted to throw those two in there. Pam, I know you had something to add to that as well.
Yeah, I just want us to also not forget about families. Right now, we have Salvation Army has space for one homeless family with children. And that's something else I think we need to keep out there, that we need more resources for families with children. So
Yeah,
just want
that's
to
a
put
great
that out
point
there.
too, Pam. And I know that, I think, largely because of some of the conversations our community has had, and Pam's been involved in a lot of those, at least I know our city council, as they consider building projects and zoning decisions, there are a lot of discussions going on around affordable housing in Wausau, which is obviously a good thing for people in our community who, who are homeless, but also those who are near homeless and may be homeless if they lose a job or that kind of thing. So those discussions are happening more today than they have in a long time, or maybe ever. And so I'll go on to this next question that Elle asked. It's how does the medical community interface with the housing task force, and are there mechanisms for care for homeless individuals? And so I guess I would ask maybe Tracy to talk about that. I know there is a pretty significant demand on our EMS paramedic services through the Wausau Fire Department in regards to calls for service on individuals experiencing homelessness. There's a lot of demand on our emergency room time for issues that individuals experiencing homelessness are having. But I know that there's a free clinic that's recently opened. Jeff Todd has been involved in that at a very deep level. Dr. Oz is unbelievable in supporting our homeless individuals here in Wausau. So Tracy, if you're still on, would you mind talking about that a little bit? You probably know more than
Sure. So the First Presbyterian Church developed a free clinic, and about a year ago, they approached Catholic Charities and asked if they would be able to utilize space in our current building at 540 South 3rd Ave to potentially provide medical care on one particular evening of shelter every week. We, of course, without hesitation, welcomed that offer, and they took our conference room upstairs in our building and provided medical care to the clientele that were staying with us on that given evening. That proved to be successful in that it lowered the frequency of ER visits, and it lowered the frequency of people presenting to the ER with acute issues such as just coughs, things like that. So with that first year of success, as we've had to relocate this warming season due to the pandemic, the First Presbyterian Free Clinic was certainly going to be part of that. And they have done so. They are in the basement of the church with us, and they are providing that same medical care 1 night a week. And as Ben had mentioned, Dr. Jeff Oswald with the Marshfield Clinics Teen Center has been instrumental. He's fantastic. He's not only a physician that's actually on site every week, but he's also a physician that makes himself on call to our staff and to our clientele when and if we need him any other day of the week as well. As we've navigated through the pandemic together and had tried to identify an alternative space for people to quarantine in, myself and Dr. Oswald, as well as some others, had worked really collaboratively to figure out an alternative space for those individuals to go to and put a protocol in place and a procedure in place to get them screened and tested and moved out. So he's been an integral part of that as well. And I believe that the free clinic just opened up additional services on Tuesdays and Thursdays during off shelter time. So during the daytime hours, providing free care to any individual in our community that meets the criteria. And I believe those hours are from 2 until 5 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we do have that service, and it's working fantastically. And as you see, the previous slide that was up a few slides ago, Community Partners Campus does have space there for the free clinic to come right along with us on the journey, because it's so important and it is making an impact on all of our resources as a whole.
Awesome. I'll also add, just on a not as day-to-day medical care, but there was also a lot of work done around making sure that if an unhoused individual who's taking advantage of the shelters here ends up with COVID, how do we make sure that we take care of them? Because that's a basic human right, that they are able to be taken care of and that they have a space to quarantine. And so there were many, many hours that myself and Jeff Sargent put into putting together a plan with the county and the Marathon County Health Department. And just Ben Bliven was part of that as well, securing hotels for them to make sure that they had, you know, their own entrance, somewhere to quarantine, somewhere safe should they have COVID. And then outside of COVID, we have a pretty strong partnership with all the medical colleges in the area, and we see a lot of volunteering from those medical students as well, whether that be just phone calls to check in on people who are, you know, possibly quarantining with COVID and staying in one of those hotels, or it's, you know, I think right now I have 3 or 4 of them assigned to different projects that we're working on, whether it be in the task force or through United Way. And so we have members of those colleges sitting on all of our coalitions, and just such a strong overall partnership with the medical community here. So awesome. Thank you, Tracy. Any other questions in chat, Ben? I can't see the chat, so okay.
Nope, that was the last one.
Okay. I think we'll take time to answer one more if there's one out there that anyone wants to ask verbally. If not, that's okay as well. I'll put my contact information up here on the screen. If you do have questions and you didn't want to ask them here, you're more than welcome to ask them to any task force member that you heard speaking tonight, or shoot me an email here. And you're also more than welcome to let me know if you want to be involved. We hear a lot from the community about, I want to get involved in this, I want to do this, I want to help. And we have work for you. That is no joke. And so we're always happy to involve the community members. We're always happy to bring you on board. And my contact information is right here. I'll also be sending a follow-up email to all the participants. That email is going to include the video that Ben linked to in the chat. It's going to include a video of the Community Partners Campus, a mock-up video of that. And then it'll also just include a couple more pieces of information around some of the work that we're doing that you can read at your leisure. And then, of course, I'll have all my contact information in there as well. And so if this is something that you're like, hey, I like this group of people, I like what they're doing, we welcome you on board, and we would love to have you and see where you could fit into this. And then probably the next time that we do this, I mean, I know we all have high hopes right now. The next time we do this, we hope we're in person. We hope we get to see you and interact with you. We can't guarantee it, but it would be great if that were the case. And I'm thinking probably it's going to be in the late summer or the early fall when we would do another community conversation. But if you have questions or you want to be updated on something in the meantime, everybody here answers to our community, and we're always happy to give you an update whenever you need one. So with that, I'm going to give another thank you to the task force. I appreciate everyone who attended that's not part of the task force, just to learn and let us bring you along about what we're doing in the community. And I'm happy to give you all 23 minutes of your night back, and I hope you have a great night. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Ben. Bye, everybody.